Hello and
Hi.
welcome to.
It's wisdom.
I've got in such a habit of letting Alison say it. So it's
Yeah.
welcome to
Wisdom for menopause and beyond.
where we talk about all things midlife, hormonal, sometimes not. But it's things that really work for us as women from middle age, 40,
whatever middle age is,
not middle age, midlife, to menopause and beyond, and things that will help us. And today we thought we'd talk about hormones.
Yes, well, it's interesting because I think we quite often talk about hormonal balance, and actually it does come up quite a lot in the webinars and the workshops that we run. And it's something that we talk about on the course that we've got on the website. And we talk about getting prepared and getting ready for menopause, getting yourself hormonally balanced. And people often say, what the hell does that look like? What does it look like? What does hormonal balance look like? And then we kind of had that, we were starting to have a conversation around that. And we thought, well, actually, it's not like you live your life and then suddenly at 35, 40, you think, oh, I better get hormonally balanced then. Because actually, and this is what, we're thinking, a good midlife, a good menopause starts young.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, and I think you had that sometimes where you said you had a client come to you and say, oh yeah, I've had really dreadful periods for 40 years. It'd be really nice when I get to menopause. And you're kind of going, doesn't actually necessarily happen that way. So we're kind of going to be talking about that whole journey.
Yeah,
really.
We kind of have about 10 years-ish where we do have hormones, but not so visibly. So from the age of 0 to about 10.
Yeah.
And then puberty hits and we get hormones. And then we live with those hormones until we change those again into menopause.
Yeah. So, but I think now you just said we live with those hormones. And I think that's a quite interesting point to make, because people have it. I have my hormones.
I have my hormones.
These are the hormones that I have. This is what I'm always doing. And when people talk about kind of, and sometimes it's talking about that whole thing with periods, bad periods, good periods, I'm lucky or I'm unlucky. It just so happened that I am this way. And we're actually saying that's not the case.
No, hormones are changeable, can be influenced, are to a large extent much more in your control.
Yeah.
So our height is pretty much set. We can't do a great deal about it.
Never mind.
Our weight is less set. It has parameters within which we can act. And I'm not going into the other way.
Go there.
But it's just, we know that some people are very lightly built, some people are slightly differently built, and within that you can be different. Now hormones are much more like that, in that you can have a kind of pattern given to you, and within that pattern you can change it. So people think hormones just come in and you just deal with it. And one of the things I get quite dramatic about,
angry is the word I was thinking of.
I've seen there's always lots of people have these little neighborhood sites where they post problems.
You need to stop reading those things.
But someone was saying that their daughter is really struggling at school because she's just started her periods and she's got super heavy periods. So she's bleeding through within half an hour. The school won't let her keep going out of the class because they think they don't believe her. She's bleeding for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks at a time. And
bloody exhausted.
Which is absolutely, there'll be lots of issues about that. So the mum's saying, what can I do? And someone else said, oh, my daughter has this too. I took her to the doctor. The doctor's cured her by putting her on the pill. Now, I'm not going into the medicalization, but it seems to be that people think there's a problem, there's something wrong, there's nothing they can do. So they have to take a pill.
Medication, which cures it.
But all it does is suppress the hormones. So I thought what I do, talking about it, is what can you do? What I mean, can you change this, or is this a medical condition?
Okay.
So
So maybe a good place to start would be, what does a good menarche look like? Should we start with the positive side of it? If we're looking at periods, which are kind of a big thing about women's hormonal journey, you know, and the rest of it, what should they be looking like, you know?
So the period, the bleed, is the visualization, what you see.
Yeah.
But the hormones are what is behind all of that.
Yeah. Okay.
So menarche is the beginning of the bleed. It's when things first happen, typically about 12, although it can happen. It happens when your body fat to weight ratio triggers.
Okay.
And that's what triggers your hormones starting. And when they start, first of all, they don't have to be super light. A lot of people go, oh, it's just a little bit of brown spotting, and then 3 months later you'll get another little bit of brown spotting. Then you won't get much at all. Who knows what's going to happen? It's very varied, a balanced period. So it could be just a little bit of spotting now and again.
Yeah.
It could be that you start with a full-on bleed.
Right.
So some girls start with a 4 or 5 day red bleed.
Yeah.
And they can again disappear for 6 months, come back every 3 months, or they can start bang on every 28 days.
Yeah.
In that, you would expect them to last day 1 to be a reasonable bleed, day 2 to be perhaps a little bit heavier. It's probably changing every 2 to 3 hours with the right sort of tampons. So when you first start,
or
maybe
your period pants or your moon cup or whatever else.
But if you look at the right sort of level of whatever that is, it's about a regular, so you're not looking too much. And you should go every 3-4 hours, something like that. Once they could take 2 years to establish. If they're not established by that time, I would say the hormones are out. So a nice red bleed can be regular, may not be. Established within 2 years. And you shouldn't have, so it's easier to say what they shouldn't be, really.
Well, exactly.
But you should have a fairly regular mood within that space.
Okay.
So you don't want to be crazy. And it shouldn't overtake your life. It should be something that just fits.
So in terms of like cramping and pain and stuff like that, what is there a particular level?
Your body's definitely moving. Your uterus is squeezing. So you expect that to be, really feel like
so uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. Just a little bit of
paracetamol.
Paracetamol. If you're feeling a bit down. But no more. You shouldn't be on paracetamol every 4 hours or 2 hours.
Maybe only at the inception of it, or the worst bit of it.
The worst bit of it, maybe for the day. You might just feel a little bit like you can't really be bothered. You might feel a little bit tired, just a little bit like, oh, I can't really be bothered doing too much of that. But once I'm up and running, I'm okay. It's fine. So it's just like that first movement. So you shouldn't be exhausted.
But you might take 2 years to get into that regularity of it.
You might take 2 years. That's at the outside end.
Okay.
I would hope that they would settle within a year, within 2 years. And for a large number of girls that are 12, it should be about 2 to 3 months. The first one you might have to wait, then the next one, and then they're kind of every. And the regularity, everyone in the world has 28 days exactly. No, that's not true. Amazingly, that's not true. So they should be within a day or two of whatever that cycle is. I'll say that. So if you have a 28-day cycle or a 30-day cycle, it may be 27, 28, 27, 29, 28. But if it's 28, 34, that's too much. That means the cycle isn't working very well.
Because it was interesting, because I remember I was a 28, 31, regular as clockwork. So I knew. So that, and obviously that you're getting it from one ovary or the other ovary. So that's what it was. But it was in that I knew exactly what was happening.
So that may have been a year or two before that sort of settled in. Sometimes you go left, right. Sometimes it goes right, left, right, you know, so some again it more often than not it's one and then the other.
Okay.
The hormone balance is what's going on for the 3 weeks before you bleed.
Okay.
So the hormone balance, it's a rise in estrogen, which brings you to mid-cycle.
Yeah.
The other thing that nobody tells a lot of young girls is you should get a little bit of cervical mucus coming in around mid-cycle.
Oh, right.
And the mucus that comes away should be a little bit clear, get clearer. And then when you get to mid-cycle, which is around ovulation, it becomes quite like uncooked egg white.
Oh, lovely.
And that comes
be a bit worrying to find any knickers.
Now, I can remember clearly thinking, oh, I'm never going to tell anybody ever that ever happened, because people don't realize it's a good sign that your estrogen is rising. It gets to ovulation. The estrogen drops like a stone on ovulation. It comes down and it immediately hands over like a baton, like in a relay race. You hand that baton over as quick as you can, and the progesterone takes over. The estrogen disappears, and then you come up to the bleed. Okay. A good bleed should start quickly because it means the progesterone's dropped like a stone. The bleed kicks in. The progesterone disappears, and then the estrogen comes in. So that beautiful cycle, if it's running well, the result of that will be a very even bleed, because there's no leftover hormones hanging around. There's no excess hormones. If you have an excess of estrogen, you're likely to get overgrowth. Too much blood. Okay. Too much pain.
So let's just recap then in terms of a good, so a good one is it's kind of regular. You might feel some discomfort. It's not going to interfere with your life. You might have some symptoms, but in a sense, we're talking about the copable end of it. And, and that's kind of things. And as it settles down, it should have some kind of regularity. And that will represent quite a normal, that's kind of hormonal balance in terms of because there is that different cycle.
Because that cycle
so it's not the same the whole time.
Drops.
It has different things going on.
Every day there's a new part. The cervix, the uterus changes every day. The cervix changes every day. So you would expect to have slightly different feelings and going on in the body.
So that's what it should look like. Yeah. Okay. So now let's think about when it's not like that. Okay. So, what are the things? So it's interesting. So obviously the one that you describe where the woman said her 12-year-old was having this, that doesn't sound like hormonal balance to me.
This is now very occasionally the hormones can come in and they a bit like go, oh, and it can be overwhelming. Yeah. And when there is too much out of balance, it's a lack of progesterone, too much estrogen, the luteinizing hormone. There are many hormones that balance here. So you will get usually a lot of pain.
Right. Yes.
Cramping, really heavy cramping. So if your cramping requires painkillers.
So that was me.
Right.
That was me. 3 hours lying in bed, incapable.
Yeah. Yeah. That means your hormones are a little bit, that they're out of balance. Yeah. Mood swings, massive mood swings. It's not one of those things. I've always been somebody that's been really irritable and really angry for a week before a bleed. That's not acceptable. You don't have to live with that.
Right. You don't have to be that way.
No, you really don't. So that again is the series of the hormones being out of balance. Yeah. Excessive bleed. Clots should be no bigger than your thumbnail. Right. And that's unusual, and you shouldn't have that for very long. If you're having big clots, I spoke to somebody yesterday, I said about the size of my palm of my hand. And
crikey.
Amazingly, it's like you're passing a huge clot, so it's very painful. That is your endometrium's too thick, and she had adenomyosis, which is the uterus is too bulky. Yeah, so that's not a good sign. Your hormones are out with that. We can have other conditions. There's other conditions that can go along.
That quite people say sometimes there's a cyst might. happen?
Cysts are incredibly common, usually as a result of estrogen there's too much, because estrogen grows
and
stuff.
I think that's an interesting point to say. A cyst, once you get rid of the cyst, it's not you've cured it. A cyst is a result of hormonal imbalance, rather than the other way around.
A lot of people think of a cyst as a growth, and a growth as a problem, and the growth has caused a problem.
We need to get rid of it.
We need to get rid of that, and if we get rid of the growth, then it stops things happening. Whereas actually, cysts are as a result on the ovaries, around that sort of place. That are as a result of hormones being out of balance. There's too much, and it's mischievous, and it grows things.
And you can say, and it can come and go.
And cysts can come and go. And cysts will more commonly burst, and they're excruciating when they burst. And then you're fine. And it's interesting that you think, I'm going to die. I wish I could die. I haven't died. I wish I could. Oh, I'm fine. And there it's so all of these things are a sign that your hormones aren't balanced, and you can change them. That's the key. I keep forgetting sometimes
can change it. Yes, that's right. And then, but the thing is, other things that people might find is PCOS and endometriosis are a sign of hormones being out of balance.
Yes, hormone being out of balance. This beautiful sort of swing of hormones is not working very well. PCOS is something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, and instead of the follicles grow in the ovary, the follicle bursts out of the ovary, and that's the egg, right? And the egg travels down the fallopian tube, and we all know what happens next. That's what happens. So when there isn't enough energy, what happens is the follicle comes out as a little cyst. That's what this is going to and it just comes out and it goes, and it sort of sits, the ovary is there, and it sort of sits outside.
Oh, right.
And then it goes next to them. And they just sort of sit like this. So these sort of unenergetic eggs sort of come out, and they can actually grow.
Lying on the sofa there, aren't they?
They can actually come out like a string of pearls in extreme consequence. So they're like seaweed with pearls, and they float around the body.
Interesting.
Endometriosis is where the endometrium, instead of building inside the uterus, escapes the uterus or grows outside of the uterus, and it's like seaweed going through the sea. It goes through the body, and it comes across the bowel or the bladder. And the endometrium, which when you see it, is not blood, it's sort of a little bit stringy, and it wraps itself around there, which is annoying. But when it bleeds, of course, all the endometrium contracts.
Wherever it is.
So it wraps itself around the bowel or the bladder. And then you get the most amazingly painful, because your bowel and bladder. I've even seen it wrapped around people's lung. So it travels through the body. Again, medical treatment for that, because it is come from a hormonal imbalance. It's not a disease. It's the hormonal imbalance that's doing strange things in the body. And what the doctors can do is open you up, laser all of this off as far as they can, because they try not to kill the bladder and the bowel and lungs and things.
That would be advisable.
That would be advisable. So they can only get so near and do so much. But the hormones themselves being out of balance, it will come back. It will just come back. So it's not a disease, and it's not an unfortunate event where people go, I have this.
So it is like, so in a sense, what people might find is then they might get recommended the pill for whatever, the bad periods or for the other things like that. And I had somebody who had endometriosis, and she was told to have a coil. So there was that, but she was only 20, and I'm like, blimey. Anyway, and then so there are other things that they have a limited use, so they have a limited range of tools.
Really limited range. The first thing is the limited number of tools they have don't work, because they're a very, very blunt instrument. So we've got this beautiful sweep of hormones that are influenced not just by estrogen and progesterone, they're influenced by lots and lots of other things in the body. In fact, everything is speaking to it, and it's such a fine balance. If you put something else in, It's going to tip everything.
Yeah.
It's a bit like watching a 2-year-old trying to balance scales. They put something in this side and it goes down, and then they put something in that side and it goes up. So these very blunt tools, and it's interesting you say about this, because I always describe it as, and I may have done in one of our previous videos, but if you've got someone that's the best Formula One mechanic, they know everything about this beautiful car that is absolutely brilliant, and it's broken, and you give him a chisel and a hammer and say, can you go fix it? And they go, I can't fix it with this. So the doctors know a lot, they understand a lot, they can diagnose and they can see, and then they give the pill and that doesn't work.
No.
Or it works for a short time, and then the hormones are like the balance scales. As they're passing, they're balanced, and then it goes off again.
And like you were saying, the coil can work in some instances, but actually it doesn't solve the problem.
It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't address the problem.
It just kind of is a bit of a sticking plaster
in
a way.
And interestingly, the Mirena coil is the pill in a coil in the uterus.
Right.
And people, the idea is it's localized, but the blood still travels from the the uterus into the body.
Blood does travel around.
So it does actually get through all of it.
But
also the way people absorb the hormone out of the Mirena coil is different.
Right.
So some people might empty that coil in a year.
Wow.
Some people might have half left after 5 years.
Right.
So it's again a bit of a blunt instrument. So what the thing that regulates your hormones perfectly is your own brain, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, parts of the brain that are designed to do this, regulate your hormones really well.
So how can we do that then? What might be, if somebody has, periods that are interfering with their life, they're painful, they're this, that, and the other, they don't work, if they've got endometriosis, PCOS, all those different things. Cysts, all of those things seem to be a symptom, a result of hormonal imbalance.
They are all a result of.
So what might be good things to try?
Well, good things to try. You first and foremost, there's really good vitamins, good levels of B vitamins, good supplements. Make is everything. We can put a link with this with a couple of firms that I recommend. They're not the only ones, but I do know that they
other varieties are
available. It's just that sometimes you can get in a spin with what you advise, and it's easier. But I would look at a holistic approach. So I do homeopathy. It's incredibly it works. Herbs and supplements, but always, especially if you're younger, you go to a professional herbalist. I like Chinese medicine. The herbalists I like are Chinese trained, because they're trained for 9 years. It's a really good place. Acupuncture can work. I think you probably need something that kind of has that deep effect on the body, because we're talking about deep regions of the vein. So if you're not getting very much result from supplements or taking sage or taking something, it's not going to work. This is especially from the young age at menarche. It's
because this is setting you up for the rest of your life.
This is setting you up for the rest of your life. It's setting you up for everything. And the other thing that is a major influence is outside sources. Stress. Now, a lot of kids I see, life's tough. Life is just tough, and lots of things happen that you have. As a parent, you've lost your job. You might come home.
So your living
situation may not be great. You might be ending a relationship, and it's tricky, and it's all got a bit disastrous, and other things that might be going on. But if a child, or even stress of school and social media, there's a lot of stresses. Now, if you're looking, one of the big things I look at, if it's not in the family history, is if somebody has a family history of very balanced hormones and they're coming through unbalanced, always look at that.
What else is going on?
What else is going on? Because especially at that age, the stress hormones, the adrenaline, the noradrenaline, serotonin, all those are huge in the body, and they directly react with estrogen.
Okay, right.
So there's a direct connection with estrogen. With diet, insulin has a direct connection with estrogen, and funnily enough, the same drug that they treat type 2 diabetes is they treat PCOS. So we know
there's a link there.
There's a link.
Yeah.
So good diet.
Yeah.
Staying away from sugars and fats.
And probably, yes, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry I have to come out with this. Haribo, no.
Having they can be helpful.
Yeah.
Because of the direct link with other hormones. So the hormones are very changeable. It's not like you say unlucky, they're very changeable.
Yeah.
So we have that. And supplements are very good as well. So we know that, but looking at how much anger has this person got all the time?
Oh, crikey.
How much stress and how much relaxation do they really have? Meditation.
Yeah.
Family support. And we were talking earlier about the importance of a social life, which I'm afraid, especially when you've got everyone rushing in and out of house, it's really busy and who's left on the side. Are we having a quiet, supportive time?
Yeah.
And how much is really going on?
Yeah, because I think there is a tendency, because now that we're so much more aware that there are more possibilities for kids at this time, that parents can get into, we've got to have, maths tutoring. And then we've got to have, then we've got to play cricket, and then we've got to do this kind of thing, and then they must do French, and they've got to do music, and they've got to do many things. And I always remember, and it might have just been because I was mean or whatever, my own particular upbringing, but I remember with my kids, I always said to them, you can have 2 activities, and then actually you need to be bored. Yes, for some time. You need to be bored. You need to watch the television. You need to read a book. You need to play Lego, whatever it is.
Walk and have a bit of alone time.
Yeah,
just to de-stress.
Yeah, so I think sometimes we can be guilty of trying to provide so much for kids that they become overloaded and they never have a moment.
And we were talking about the importance for releasing our creativity.
Yeah,
is having 10 minutes silence.
Yeah,
not 10 minutes going through your phone in silence.
No.
And we were talking about, you can look this up in our other video, but we were talking about something called Savers, which is a sort of an hour of releasing your creativity. And kids need to release their own creativity, not be constantly occupied. So
part of that could be doing nothing.
Absolutely
even
nothing.
Just sitting at the window, even if you say to them, right, 10 minutes, just look out the window, because you will see something, whatever will go on, and your brain just has that a bit of time to calm down.
Be listened to as well, because a lot of the time you genuinely are busy. And so there's lots of things.
So that seems like quite a good menu of things to try. So there's kind of diet, supplements is one thing, looking at that, what might help. What is going on in the diet. What's happening there, what is looking in terms of the life, the stress events, is there anything that can be done, can we introduce a bit more doing nothing, and maybe look at something which you feel, and I guess it's the parent that's going to be making this decision, is like, what do you think might work? Is it going to be acupuncture? Is it going to be homeopathy? Is it going to be a professional nutritionist? Whatever it is, what do you think? There might be a professional I think health person that might then be able to help with those.
I think if you've done the very simple things, and quality vitamins matter. Don't go to Tesco's or Asda, but quality vitamins, and you look at the food, then I would get some support. Because you should notice changes, especially with a young girl. In 2 to 3 months, it should be quick, because they're not so embroiled in their life. These hormones should be ready to shift and change, because they've got lots of growth hormones, lots of things going on. So you want to get that in line while you've got the growth hormones, while you've got these hormones getting embedded. They will set you up for 40 happy years.
I know, that's amazing, isn't it? So I just kind of think, finishing off here, it's really important to think, so if we've got to midlife, it's kind of, you're at a stage where you are, it's not an accident in a sense. You're building on your life up to this point.
Exactly.
And I think, so the things that we've talked about is really, if you're in that situation of having kids or whatever, then you are able to look at that and say, if your children are going through these kind of times, then there are things you can do about it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. And I know people kind of say, that's just me, I've just got to put up with it.
And
so we're not in agreement with that statement. No, and you don't have to put up with
one
it.
Of the big things people have to put up with is this sort of, I would say, mid-time between sort of 20 and 40, where the hormones are quite consistent. Whatever you set them up to be, they will sort of be consistent along that time. And that is, I always become impossible for 7 days. I always don't sleep for 7 days.
Yeah.
I always get very hot or very cold for so long. So I think setting yourself up early is good, because seeking help at that point.
Yeah.
And the other thing is looking at contraception.
Oh, yes. There's a biggie.
It's a biggie, because to be fair, we do reach a time in our life when you think, I would like to have sex and no kids. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I would like to do that. And contraception is again sold to us as like it's fine. It doesn't make any impact. And there are a proportion of people, the majority of people, that's largely true for.
Yeah.
To be fair, there isn't a huge amount. We've only got 2 generations of this data, which is a lot, but we haven't got lots of ramifications. But largely people go on the pill, they feel fine, they come off the pill, they have family, they're fine.
Yeah.
But there are people that, because their hormones are quite delicate, or they absorb them, they're very, very sensitive to hormones. In the same way, I can eat a bag of peanuts, someone else, you eat one and you're dead.
You even sniff a peanut.
You even sniff a peanut and it's dead.
You know, right.
So for some people, they are incredibly sensitive to hormones. So they're people that you need to think carefully before you push through. So people come and they say, I tried this pill and it just didn't work. I was just terribly ill. So the doctor said, give it another 6 months.
Okay.
And then they change it to something else, and they change it to something else. Now, this might be just, I'm one of those people that doesn't do chemical hormones.
Yeah.
So you might prefer a barrier method. So rather than just go straight into this thinking, I'll plow through it for 2 years.
And I'll also take the pill for 20 years.
I'll take the pill for 20 years. You might need to really just look at your hormone sensitivity.
Yeah.
What was your menarche like? Did it take a while to settle? Are you somebody that, as long as everything's balanced, you're okay, but if it goes out, think carefully about taking. And the pill is probably the most tolerated. The Mirena coil is fairly well tolerated. People know if it's not for them.
Quite immediately.
But the other thing is, people have the injection, and it's an injection of depot, and it's in there for 6 months to 2 years. Depot was originally designed to stop women ever being able to get pregnant. It was designed to...
it's like a sterilisation.
It was a one-chance sterilisation.
Bloody hell. Okay.
The politics of which are beyond this. We'll do that.
We're not going there.
So it failed a lot of the time.
Okay. All right.
So they
quite interesting.
So they re-greened it as a contraceptive.
Aha.
But it's worth bearing in mind that for some very sensitive people,
it could be.
It can change them. And there is something called post-pill syndrome that is being currently heavily researched, and that's kind of out there. It is sometimes there. So looking at your sensitivity, looking at your family's sensitivity. If you try the pill and it doesn't suit you, it might well be thinking, you know what, for me, it's a barrier method, rather than ploughing through it and potentially getting to that point.
And I think that was kind of like, for me, I remember going through that. I only took the pill for 5 years in the end, and then I got into a steady relationship, and I thought, why am I taking this every day? And then got interested in barrier methods, but also I was one that I had control of myself. So, I used the cap, and I was also part of a study that used something called a sponge. It was just wonderful. It was the best thing.
The sponge.
It was the best thing.
It was just wonderful. But it's one of those things that look at what would work for you. But whilst it's such a lovely idyll to think I'll just pop a pill and then I'm fine and I know this doesn't happen, it's just looking at that sense.
And I think it is true, as we say often, everything that you take has a side effect.
Everything has a side
Aspirin,
effect.
you know, whatever, everything has a side effect. So it's fine. And, you know, and it's not just because you feel fine at the moment and all the rest of it, think, oh, it's working, it's all lovely. Now, we don't want to scare people in that sense, but it is almost like saying, well, okay, am I just getting, and we also talk about this in terms of preparing to have a good midlife, that you should actually know what your cycle is. But if you're using a form of contraception which doesn't allow you to have a cycle,
no,
which the pill is what, you don't have a cycle in that.
There's the combined pill allows you to bleed, and people say that's a period. It isn't. It's the withdrawal bleed. So when you stop it, the body sort of goes, ooh, and bleeds. But it isn't. You haven't done that beautiful natural cycle to encourage that natural growth.
No.
So you don't know what that is.
No.
So your proper cycle, your hormone balances, if you had a relatively stress-free childhood, your periods sort of came in and balanced within a year of starting, a year to 2 years starting, that's normally your proper natural DNA cycle. Now, when we see people that have come off the pill, they've been on the pill for 10 years, 15 years, and they go, I used to bleed for 7 days, I now only bleed for 2. I used to have terrible pain, which was probably a bit too much pain. Now I don't even know it's happening. Or I used to have a nice 4-day cycle, it was kind of fine. I took paracetamol twice a year, it was okay. Now I'm doubled over, I'm bleeding for 10 days. So
there has been some change in that period.
A change in cycle means something has gone out of balance in that brain chemistry in the body, and that will affect you fertility wise perhaps, but definitely affect you with the menopause, because the menopause is trying to come in and do something. So you want to kind of get back to a very close image of your early
or of a good, if it was good, healthy.
So once that menarche becomes settled, and if it doesn't seek help, don't put up with it. You're aiming for that for a couple of years before you go to menopause. Or perimenopause.
That'd be nice.
And so that means you generally walk through perimenopause with no problems.
So then it's kind of thinking about, so we always talk about planning as being important and saying you really should be doing this from about age 35-ish, even though at the moment they talk about the average, you know, age here is 48, 52 when you actually go into menopause. But 35 gives you enough time to think about it, what's kind of going on, experiment with a few things. Maybe if you want to, coming off your oral contraception or using it differently, or using a different method and getting to know your cycle quite well.
If your cycle,
and then
if your cycle,
balancing it with that knowledge.
And if it doesn't resemble your cycle, your own cycle that you had before you took anything, before you got involved, you need to we go back to those deep brain chemistry changes of acupuncture, possibly a medical herbalist, those sorts of people that would be able to
homeopathy of course,
that would really change it back. And then when that comes back, you should walk through your perimenopause. So when, as you started, when people say, how do I know my hormones are balanced? That's how we know.
That's how you know.
And we say you shouldn't have to suffer between through menopause from one side to the other, but bigger than that, you shouldn't suffer through your hormonal life either. You should be a bit grouchy the day before you bleed. Terrible. It's just like, oh, stop telling me all. Oh gosh, really? But you shouldn't be like it shouldn't be that moment in time.
No.
And it shouldn't be days.
So I think that's good. So so there's a good place to kind of, you know, come to, I think, which is, I think, and the most important message is, one, you don't have to put up with it.
No,
you don't have to suffer.
It's not a separate disease. It is,
and you need to be
part of
it's hormonal balance throughout your life, not just suddenly thinking about it when you're 42.
No, definitely not.
So so start early.